In last week's Family Guy episode titled Dear Francis, Chris mistakes real life for the internet and says this:
www.bustylatinowives.org.
And if you actually type that website in, this image comes up. Yep, the team really made this site for any curious creeps out there. It's crazy that they did that, and if you're wondering why I looked it up, then it was purely for research purposes. Quickly moving on, and Family Guy dropped 2 new episodes last night. There's a Lord of the Rings parody with Herbert playing Gandalf.
Sorry my hobbit hole is so tight.
Meg dies a lot, and Peter just can't get over Lois's body count.
60.
There's a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. But before that, I missed last week's 2 episodes, so I'll quickly give my thoughts on those right now. So episode 4, Bringing Up Brady, sees Meg meet NFL legend Tom Brady, who's doing the commentary for a football game. Tom's very inexperienced on the mic, and since Meg is apparently a football expert now, she starts feeding him lines live through an earpiece. Of course she starts falling for him, but when she overhears him trash talking her, she decides to get revenge. Now, as most fans know, the Griffins already met Tom Brady way back in Season 4's Patriot games. This is of course where Peter played for the New England Patriots. Brady even came for dinner, and when his shirt got dirty he had to shower, and this is when Lois and Meg spied on him. So I don't know why everyone's acting as though they haven't met him before and that they're total strangers. And alright, I'm being a bit pedantic. I guess I really shouldn't be too surprised by Family Guy's lack of respect for continuity by this point, but it was still a little annoying. Especially when you compare it to the recent American Dad premiere, where there were tons of callbacks to past characters and events. I think fans really appreciate it when writers reward long-time viewers like this. I mean, you could still have them remember each other, and story-wise, it wouldn't have changed a thing. But aside from that, I did laugh a few times in this episode. I liked Meg rising out of the hot dog juice like an apocalypse now.
This woman smells like hot dogs.
And I enjoyed the recurring gag of everyone telling Meg to shorten her long sentences.
I applied for the job and I got it.
Yes, that is the exact length of story that men want to hear.
But overall though, I thought the Brady and Meg interactions were pretty unremarkable. But saying that, Brady repeating that he had gotten his period that day did get a big laugh out of me.
I just got my period, and I have to get to the bathroom. It's a crime scene down there.
But you know what, I actually prefer the subplot of Stewie and Brian deciding to live in IKEA, because when I was a kid, I liked to imagine what it would be like to live inside a mall or a big department store. Stewie and Brian throwing a lavish party while also trying to make sure nobody realizes that they're secretly living inside IKEA was really funny.
In IKEA.
Right, we gotta kill this bitch.
I also loved when they realized that none of the ovens or toilets worked.
Feel free to use any one of the 40 commodes on the premises. Only use one that hasn't been previously used.
To be honest, I wish this took up more of the episode.
I like our life.
But overall, a decent middle-of-the-road episode, and I'll give it 3 out of 5 stars. So, now on to episode 5, called Dear Francis. So when Peter accidentally says the name of his dead dad during sex, Lois takes him to therapy to get to the root cause of his daddy issues. But as it turns out, Peter was only thinking of the hot new waitress called Francis.
I was thinking about that new waitress.
Oh boy.
Lois will get it, right?
No way, Peter.
Some of my favourite moments here include Peter visiting Francis's tombstone, and it reads season 1 to 5. And then when Peter is forced to spend time with the kids, I found it hilarious that Meg is just kind of standing there like a vacant NPC, just waiting for someone to interact with her. We then find out that one of Meg's hobbies includes cockfighting, and that Russian mobsters are afraid of her.
И теперь засмейся, как будто я сказала что-то смешное, и уходи.
Which made me wonder, is this Meg actually the Russian spy who killed and replaced the original Meg back in season 15?
We have been orphan blacked, and you soon will be dead.
I know it's just a gag, but honestly, I'm starting to think that Russian Meg is canon. Another funny moment here was when Peter tells the guys about Francis' accident, and Joe responds with this.
Well, I suppose that was a fair assumption. Your dad was pretty hot.
But my favourite scene was when Peter realises that he needs a boombox in order to do a big romantic gesture for Lois. And since electronic stores are basically out of business, he has to win one at an arcade. So he starts collecting tickets, gambling on cockfights to win more tickets, and even stripping for tickets. It's so stupidly funny. I did kind of feel bad for Frances the waitress though, when Lois and the girls dropped her off in the middle of nowhere. I'm giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. So now let's get into the 2 latest episodes from Sunday night. Starting with episode 6's Viewer DMs. This is a sequel to those great viewer mail episodes. And they've only done 2 before, with the last airing back in 2012, but I've always loved this format because it lets the writers go even crazier and tell more outlandish stories. Anyway, the first question Brian and Stewie get asked is, where did Chris's earring go? And instead of just giving us a straight answer, they give us a Lord of the Rings parody. Using Chris's golden earring as the One Ring was genius. Peter plays Aragorn, Quagmire as Legolas, Joe as Gimli, Stewie as Gollum, and Meg as Shelob.
I'm this! Ah, frick.
And it is funny how Meg is always the monster in these types of things.
How come I never get any lines in these things?
Shut up, Meg.
Herbert playing Gandalf is absolutely hilarious. Funnily enough, this ties back to a gag way back from season 4 where Herbert fights the tree demon.
You shall not pass.
The whole thing reminded me a lot of the Star Wars parody that they did years ago, where they lovingly poke fun at the movies. I just wish this parody had been its own separate thing, because cramming 3 epic movies into one short segment doesn't give enough time for it to breathe. It's over far too quickly and feels super rushed. I wish they could have done 1 episode per movie. Despite that complaint though, I still really enjoy this segment. I really laughed when Chris remarks about how unhelpful the Middle Earth map is.
I mean, there's really no detail on here. This is basically a child's menu.
There's one gag that I didn't get though, and that's when Peter says that the movie soundtrack is so forgettable that they could just put any music over it. And I was like, what? You mean the Oscar-winning score from Howard Shore that's widely considered one of the greatest film soundtracks ever made is, what? Forgettable? Huh? Unless the joke is that the music is so good that Peter somehow thinks it isn't, then I genuinely have no idea. It was just a really, really odd joke. But you know what? The second segment is titled Go East, Fat Man. And it follows the Griffins travelling along the Oregon Trail to settle in Quahog. And during their long, perilous journey, their many daughters, who all look like Meg, dies.
You're the inside Meg now.
Stranded in the snow, Peter prays to God to send down an angel to help, only to get spooked and shoot it. And you know what? This did get a little giggle out of me. Especially when a scared second angel comes down.
Hey, man.
Look, just be cool, alright?
The angel melts the snow, clearing the path to Quahog, and when they finally arrive, they immediately kick a family of natives out of their home.
I know this sucks, but all of America did this, so it's not just me, so it's okay.
And when I had a few decent moments, I found this segment pretty weak overall. The third and final segment is called the Glenn Quagmire Giggity Good Time Hour, and I looked it up and I believe they're parodying the Dean Martin show that ran from 1965 to 1974, and I can totally see Seth MacFarlane loving this show back in the day and getting a real kick out of these jokes. But for me, I didn't laugh once. The problem is that everything was way too specific to find it funny. Like watching through some scenes of the Dean Martin show, I get that he sweated a lot. Okay, fine. But what's with the couch joke? Same with the marching band bit where he gets angry when one of them hits the set. I mean, that must have been referencing something very incredibly specific, because I looked it up and I couldn't find anything. I mean, what's that joke supposed to be? Honestly, I felt like the segment was written to make Seth and his friends laugh, not the audience. The whole premise was supposed to show what a Quagmire spin-off show might look like, and if it's anything like this, then I never want to see it. The only saving grace of this episode, of course, was the Lord of the Rings parody, so overall I'm giving this just 2 out of 5 stars. So now let's get to the 7th episode, Scent of a Woman. Opening in the pharmacy, Brian reveals that he has the ability to smell what ailments people have.
She has diabetes. He has migraines.
A few days pass and it's Meg's birthday and she's celebrating with a Raptors basketball themed sleepover. Meg has already had a few birthdays on the show. She turned 17 in Season 5's Peter's Two Dads, and she turned 18 in Season 10's Quagmire and Meg, so I guess that this would make her around 19 now. But anyway, at the party, Peter wants to join in on their game of Truth or Dare, and Meg says this to get rid of him.
I dare you to get the hell out of here.
On it.
Now I'll come back to Peter's subplot later, but for now, Brian grabs what he thinks is Patty's bra to chew on, and while munching on her bra, Brian smells that Patty must have breast cancer. And when he reveals this to Meg, it turns out that the bra is actually hers. Thinking that she might have cancer, Brian asks Meg what she wants to do. She can literally do anything, and her dream is to visit Chaz Inferno's restaurant in Orlando.
That's it? Yeah, we can do that.
So they take a road trip, and along the way they stop in Atlanta to eat at a strip club with some Raptors players. And I love the gag where Brian tips the stripper with coins.
What are you doing?
Come on, I'm making it hail.
Meg is having the time of her life, and she's incredibly relieved when Dr. Hartman calls her to tell her that the results came back negative. But not wanting the fun with Brian to end, she doesn't tell him. So they arrive at the restaurant and meet a parody of Chef Guy Fieri. Meg even gets frosted tips to match his. But when Hartman calls again while Meg is in the bathroom and tells Brian she doesn't actually have cancer, Brian is furious that she lied to him.
As far as I'm concerned, you can find your own ride home.
And as Brian drives home, he sees Meg trying to hitchhike. During the ride back, Meg admits that she just wanted to have a fun experience with a family member who wasn't constantly mocking her or calling her ugly. But the problem is, that doesn't really make sense anymore. Meg wasn't bullied in this episode. In fact, Peter literally wants to hang out and play games with her and her friends.
Check it out, Lois. I'm playing Truth or Dare with Meg.
And sure, Lois made one remark about her birthday party idea, but the show has already established that Lois and Meg are actually closer now. They even opened up a coffee shop together earlier on in this season. So the writers have two choices, because you can't have the show just drop Meg being bullied, but then still have Meg constantly talking about how bullied she is. They've got to pick one. But aside from the Brian tipping with quarters gag, this plot didn't really have great jokes. But at least it was sweet seeing Brian and Meg bonding. I actually found the second plot more entertaining, so Peter and Lois start playing Truth or Dare with her daring Peter to lick Joe's mailbox. That's not an innuendo, by the way.
Damn it, if he gets my TV guide soggy, I'm gonna be furious.
And then Lois picks Truth, and Peter asks her this.
How many men have you slept with in your lifetime?
But Lois refuses to answer, especially when Peter says this.
Keep it in mind that any number other than 0 will send me into a 10-year spiral.
Peter becomes obsessed with Lois's body count, while Joe remains in total denial about Bonnie cheating on him.
Bonnie's only ever been with one man, and you're looking at him.
You sure about that?
Which doesn't make much sense, because the show has previously established that Joe has an arrangement where Bonnie is allowed to sleep with other men.
Sounds like somebody's having fun.
Joe? I thought that was you.
Ah, goodness, no. Pass me a Michael Crichton, she's gonna be a while.
Making these videos sometimes make me feel like one of those annoying well-actually people, but hey ho, I've gotta point it out. Anyway, not giving in, Lois instead asks for a dare, to which Peter dares her to skate off Joe's roof.
Peter, stop doing Truth or Dare stuff to my house!
Lois winds up breaking her leg, and at hospital, Peter apologizes, but not wanting to keep any secrets from each other, Lois finally comes clean.
The number is 60.
Whoa.
However, Peter eventually gets over it when Lois tells him that he was bigger than all of the other guys.
Marriage, just lie. It's not that big a deal.
While the story definitely had its moments, I kinda wish it was more about Peter and Lois just playing Truth or Dare on each other, with the truth and the dares getting increasingly more insane. And to make it really funny, each one had to include Joe in some way. Overall, this was a decent episode. There were a few funny moments here and there, but it wasn't hilarious. So therefore, I'm giving this a solid 3 out of 5 stars. But what did you think of these episodes? Let me know in the comments below. And be sure to check back tomorrow because I'll be dropping a review of the latest American Dad episode.